Hello darts fans and welcome to the latest Tungsten Talk on Pluto TV with the MODUS Super Series. And fresh off the heels of the Winmau World Masters, we're going to talk about it, myself and Scott Mitchell. And before we get into the meat and the bones and the veg of what we've seen over the last few days, the Winmau World Masters is synonymous with this sport and has been for the best part of 50 years. So how happy were you to see that the tournament had been resurrected in its older form?
Hey, look, me being one of the older statesmen in the game now, it's been a massive part of our darting lives, even when we were kids watching it on the TV. So to bring the World Masters, the Winmau World Masters back, you know, one for Winmau, one of the oldest darting companies around. There are many around now that darts is super trendy, but these guys were there right at the very start, and they got this tournament off to a run with the BDO, and yeah, the format was fabulous and exciting to watch.
What were your first memories of the tournament when you were growing up?
Yeah, probably maybe watching Eric Bristow win it as a kid. I would have been sort of around 9 or 10 then, and you know, the World Masters has been around since before the World Championship, so it is the oldest sort of trophy playing tournament, along with the British Open as well. So the World Championship is its very much younger brother, and we seem to forget that the World Masters was the thing that sort of started it all off.
So in that sense, do you think for players back then it almost felt more important to win that than the World Championship?
I think in the early days, yes, very much so, because it was the longer run and older brother. So, and that was the thing probably that highlighted the game, you know, to a TV level really. And back in those days, the BDO was finding players in pubs and clubs and turning them into superstars and getting them onto the stage, and everybody back then would have been wanting to play in that.
Bob Anderson and Eric Bristow pretty much owned the World Masters in the 1980s. But I think for people of our age, we remember when Bob Anderson won the tournament 3 times in a row, and that kind of feat should never be forgotten.
No, it shouldn't, because as the tournament gained sort of TV viewings and things, it slightly changed, because the top 16 or the top 8 would get seeded through to the TV stages. And back when Bob was winning it, you had to go right back at the floor with the other 300 to 400 qualifiers and play your way through over what is a really tricky set format from the floor. So you went from floor, and then played your last sort of 3 or 4 matches on the stage, and he did it in what is the most difficult way to ever win a dart tournament. You and I both know how different it is to play on the floor and then jump up and try and carry on that form onto the stage. And so for Bob Anderson to do that the way that he did it, yeah, very special and very a big part of the tournament's history.
Did the World Masters lose something when the split happened around 93, 94? Because there was a lot of chatter about players going to the now PDC looking for more airtime for the tournaments. And the BDO ensured that the World Championship at Lakeside was covered. But the World Masters at that point seemed to be forgotten a little bit.
It did, where it was the forefront of maybe the BDO in the 70s, you know. As time went on, it did very much become the World Championship's baby brother. And I think it did kind of lose a little bit of prestige, maybe for the viewer, and not seen quite so important, but even for players like me in the thousands when we came through, it was a really big thing to win. Those are the two. It was, you wanted to be either a world champion or a world master.
So when the people were winning in the 1990s, you look at people like Andy Fordham, Colin Monk, Graham Hunt from Australia. That was a really big victory because he's the first person to have won a world title from Australia, even before Tony David became Lakeside champion in 2002. We shouldn't forget about players having those accomplishments, should we?
No, we shouldn't. And the other thing with the World Masters that made things very different, the World Championship, you could do the circuit and gain points to be in that sort of last 32, and there were some qualifying events that you could win off one-off qualifiers. To be in the World Masters, you had to have already won something. So you had to be your national champion. There were qualifiers through your counties. You had to be your county champion, or if you were lucky enough to be on the circuit already. I mean, there were people that had qualified for the World Championships already that couldn't get into the World Masters because they hadn't qualified. So you had to win a Open tournament, a Dutch Open, a German Open. So you had to have won something. And very similar to how the Grand Slam is played in the PDC now, to be fair. So we all forget how difficult it was to even be in that field for the World Masters. It was a tough thing to even be in the room.
Moving on to the noughties, did Martin Adams do the tournament a huge favour by almost re-establishing just how important it was by winning it multiple times?
Yeah, I think he did the tournament a big favour. I think he did the organisation, the BDO at the time, a big favour. So, and it re-established what the Masters was about. And I mean, I'm one of those who the Masters got away from me a couple of times. I made 2 semi-finals and I never got there. And if you ask me at the end of my career, what was the thing that got away? And it would be definitely a World Masters trophy. The Winmau World Master was so, you want to win one of those 2 big things. And to have the World Championship, yeah, I maybe got the bigger brother a little bit. But, there's always a regret, I think, for any player that has played in the World Masters and sort of got to those latter stages. I had a couple of quarterfinals, a couple of semi-finals, just couldn't bring that one home. And because the tournament was so important, and to see it now come back as a PDC tournament and see how the format is still as fresh as it was back in 1974 or whatever when it started, I think that's the thing for me.
I think the biggest thing for the World Masters, pre what we've just seen, was John O'Shea winning it in 2019. Winning it at the Circus Tavern as well, which is a venue that is synonymous with the PDC. But how big was that for John O'Shea? Because he may never win something as big as that ever again.
I think it was massive for John. And again, like you were saying about Graham Hunt winning it for Australian, I think it was massive for the Irish darts community for having John have that trophy as well. It was also in a time where, the BDO was struggling a little bit and it needed a fresh face. It needed to see some new winners, and John O'Shea more than fit the bill.
I'm going to ask you a question now, and I know you have played in the WDF system and the BDO system a lot over the last 25 years, but did the WDF drop the ball on this one?
I probably say yes, because there is a World Masters still in the WDF, but not played in the same format. And the thing with the way that the format works is that you have never got that game done. You never got your match done until that last dart goes in. So you can have a run of winning 4 legs on the trot and be 2 sets up. And then you can have a run of winning 3 of the next 5 legs and you're sat there at 2-2. And in a last leg decider for the match. And you haven't done a lot wrong. You've won 7 legs. Your opponent has won 5, but they are still sat there and you're in a last leg decider. And I think that's what makes it a very exciting game to watch.
We've just seen a tournament over the last few decades that have made people or given them the start. People like Michael van Gerwen, but now we have a champion in Luke Humphreys, who was the first winner of the Winmau in the PDC. What a great tournament.
It was a fabulous tournament, and what a great winner to have in what is a redefined era for the Winmau World Masters. It feels fresh and it feels new, even though back in those days in 74, 75 when it started, how many tournaments still feel new and fresh like that? And that's how special the Winmau World Masters is.
Earlier in the tournament, we did see people trying to qualify on a bit of a mammoth day on Wednesday in Milton Keynes, but I personally love the fact that they have that monster qualifying day to try and get into the TV spots. But when we had the TV stages, we saw Luke Littler take out James Wade. There was a little bit of journalistic activity going into that one because James accused Luke of being lazy. I think that's a little bit strange considering some of the stories we've heard about James over the years and the lack of practice. But mind games from Wade, they didn't work, did they?
They didn't indeed. I think it just sort of stirred the fire in Luke Littler's belly, and he whitewashed him, didn't he? He just went to town on him. And the one thing you have to say about Luke Littler, yeah, he's young, but wow, he is so wise beyond his years, very mature for an 18-year-old player. And for James to try that and Luke to look at it and go, well, do you know, I'm going to let you have that now. I think it's superb.
These tactics don't work anymore, do they? Not on the new crop of players. We've seen it with the likes of Jensen Walker winning in this building, and Littler himself, and Thomas Banks. You try and play mind games with a kid these days, they're just a little bit more savvy these days, aren't they?
There's two things. They're either that young that they don't understand that it's a mind game, or they are so savvy that they will use it as fuel and fire for the game. And it's a risk that you always take. It's always been that way. When a player, even back in the day, tried to play mind games with you, it's a risk that they take by fueling you and making you happen. But these days, it's not so much in the game. And the Bristow days, we know it was very, very prominent.
Johnny Clayton played remarkably well, and we'll reference the final in a moment. But his game against Martin Schindler, a tournament record against the German number one. There was a point in that match where Martin turned away as if to say, what have I got to do to get over this guy? He just never was going to. 112.77 is quite an astonishing performance for somebody using new equipment as well.
Correct, and I think that's the astonishing part about it, that he was using new equipment. And we've always seen a time where players don't sometimes switch so well to new equipment, but to go and do that within the week of having them, and you know, the history of the tournament, to then have the highest average in all history of the tournament, shows that we're at a special time with darts at the moment, and we should embrace it no matter what the tournament. But Clayton has now put his name in World Masters folklore.
When it comes to Dimitri van den Berg, there's been a lot made of his change of walk-on song. He's no longer walking out to Happy, and he apparently is no longer dancing as much. He's just dancing differently, I think. But a great tournament for him, and a fantastic 9-darter to christen this newly refurbished tournament against MVG.
He did, and the one thing that I noticed about the 9-darter, there was no celebration. You know, these guys are now doing these 9-darters so often, you don't see people running around the stage anymore when they hit them. That's how far the game has come. But for the World Masters, to have that on the very first time that this format comes back, special moments, and everybody be remembering it next year. And I've got to be honest, I'm one of those that can't wait for it to happen again already, because the format just produces great stuff.
Well, let's talk about how it's been perceived now that the whole thing is over. This is the morning after the tournament is finished. Social media, last night, I was scrolling through it, trying to get a gauge of what the fans thought of it, and they said, this has fast become my favourite tournament. And the PDC deserve a lot of credit for what they've done, right? Absolutely,
absolutely. There was an element of risk to bring it back in its former guise. There's no two ways about it. You know, we all know what's happened to the BDO. It's gone, it's done, it's dusted. So to resurrect something from there to something so current and make it work, that is, you know, you've got to hand out big credit to the PDC. And it's an insight and it's a vision from Matt Porter and his team to say, no, I think this format could work. And wow, it did work, and it didn't fail to produce. And the fact that they took it back to doing kind of a floor tournament to qualify for the TV part of it, which is what it's always been in history, another masterstroke from the PDC.
And a final befitting any tournament, but it just happened to be at the end of this tournament. Humphreys and Johnny Clayton going toe-to-toe. Humphreys gets the lead, Clayton fights back, and they're both in a last leg shootout, pretty much confirming why this tournament format is so incredible.
Yeah, it is such a tight format. We talk about the set play at the World Championships, and we all enjoy that. You can have a bad set, you can have a set off, and it's done. line in the sand, you step over, next set. It's a very similar thing, but it's like quick fire darts because the set is so much shorter. So you've never really got a grasp of the game, and you never really know where you are in the game as a player. So for a player, we would say what a nightmare of a format, and it's difficult. But for an entertainment value, you're gonna have to go a long way to find another format that provides this entertainment. And then you have to say to yourself, how come it's taken so long to get it back in? I think it was, we were talking earlier, and you said it was a Players' Championship thing when you were in the PDC, the very same format. So where did it go from there? How has it taken so long to come back? And then you end up with a last leg shootout like you did last night. There was 4 darts left to throw at the end of that match, and you still didn't know who was going to win. Johnny Clayton was going for a 120. He's hit everything all week. He set record averages, and you think, surely he can't miss this. And it didn't go for him, and then Humphreys takes it out with his next dart, and you think, what a worthy champion, what a worthy final. And how super clever the PDC were to bring it back in.
Just imagine how Humphreys is feeling this morning. He's a world champion. He's a world match play champion. He's a world master. His CV is growing, but somebody's only started yesterday. Jack Johnson won the Super 16 in the JDC, beating Jaden Walker. These guys aren't even close to 16 years of age. What has Luke Littler done to embellish what talent is out there? Because these two kids, they put on a show.
Yeah, well, Jack very well. I know Jaden very well. The way that these kids are now coming through the system, Luke Littler has been a revelation to the youth game. And if you ask, I asked Jaden, how do you want to play darts? How do you want to do it? Where do you see yourself going? I'm going to do it the same way as Luke Littler. I want to do it the way that he did it. I want to do the path that he did. So Luke has carved this furrow in the ground that all the kids are now jumping into this hole and wanting to follow him along it. And let's not forget, Luke is still carving that furrow at 18 years old. He's still creating things that those kids want to do. And he's also back in it. It was great to see him there back in that final as well, because he wanted to watch the kids. He's excited still by watching those youth players play. And like you say, I think they were 12 and 13, weren't they? And the maturity that they had, the stage presence that they had, it's just mind-boggling. And for you and I, who are elder statesmen in the game now, don't we wish we ever had that around when we were playing as youngsters?
I couldn't agree more. One question, Scott. With the time slot of the Winmau World Masters, would you keep it at the end of January, beginning of February, as a curtain raiser, or would you maybe look at putting it somewhere else? Is it the perfect way to start the season?
I think, yes, it is. And I will say the reason for that is because it involves every player. It involves every player in a floor level, and it involves the new guys that have just got they've won at Q School and got their tour card. And to introduce them into that baptism of fire on the floor within the first couple of weeks of getting a tour card, it's like a welcome to the PDC. This is kind of your future. These are the guys you're going to be playing, 95% of the time. And I think it's a great introductory thing. So I would like to see it stay where it is, because I think it also has its place. And also you've had the excitement of the World Championships is finished. And just a few weeks later, you have this super new, what looks a new and exciting format to start the year off. And I think I would firmly keep it where it is.
Well, I think exciting is the right word to end on, because the beginning of the season, well, it has been seen over the last few days. Luke Humphreys, many congratulations from everybody here at the MODUS Super Series on becoming the Winmau World Masters champion. We will be seeing plenty of players coming through these doors over the next few months. The PDC season is up and running, so are we. Stay here for more on Pluto TV, but that was the Tungsten Talk, and we thank you for your company.